Since very early on in the series, one of the most mysterious characters in Jujutsu Kaisen has been Jujutsu Tech 3rd year Kinji Hakari. Despite first being mentioned and shown in Chapter 11, he went without being mentioned by name or being shown for over 130 chapters until Chapter 143. Now, as we get into the Culling Game arc, it seems like Hakari is finally going to make an appearance and will be a fairly important player in the Culling Game. However, we still don't really know anything about him. And the biggest mystery surrounding him so far has been what exactly his curse technique is. There's a lot of hype around Hakari's power, both in and out of universe, so today we're going to be discussing what we know and what we think may be possible for Hakari Kinji's curse technique. We should start off talking about what we do know about Hakari from information given to us in the series. For starters, of course, he's a 3rd year at Jujutsu Tech. So far, he's seemingly the only 3rd year, though Gege has said that he hasn't made up his mind on whether or not there's just Hakari or if there's another 3rd year. Gojo says that Hakari and Yuta will be as good as him one day, as in, both of them are not as strong as him yet, but they do have the potential to eventually. After the end of the Shibuya incident and Yuta's return, we have a flashback of him talking to Gojo in Africa, during which Gojo says that if anything happens to him, he wants Yuta to protect the other students, except for Hakari, because Hakari doesn't need the protection. And the last important thing we've been told is that Yuta thinks that when he's on a roll, or when he's in his best condition, Hakari is stronger than him. Of course, Maki disagrees with this, so that kind of muddies the waters a little bit about whether or not Yuta is just being humble, or if he actually is accurately gauging Hakari's strength. Things we can gather from this is that Hakari is either one of the strongest students at Jujutsu Tech or has the most potential. Honestly, kind of both. For starters, if he doesn't need Yuta to protect him from whatever Gojo thinks may be a threat after he disappears, that means that Hakari is, at the very least, stronger than all of the other students except for Yuta. This puts him at probably around grade 1 at the very least. I don't think Hakari is special grade or special grade 1. For special grade 1, it's an honorary title, and as we'll find out from the information in the fanbook, Hakari does not exactly have a good relationship with the higher-ups. The reason he's not special grade is because we've been told there are only 4 known special grades. If Hakari was a special grade himself, we would have heard about it by now. It would have been a much bigger deal. Now, it's possible that Hakari can at times reach a special grade level of power, as Yuta would suggest. However, it's likely that due to whatever sort of conditions his power operates under, he is not always that powerful, so they can't really reasonably give him a special grade designation. We've also gotten some more information about Hakari from the fanbook. These are a few minor details for the most part, however, I feel like one of them is especially important. The first thing we find out is why Hakari was suspended. During the events of Volume 0, he got into a disagreement with some of the higher-ups and ended up assaulting one of them. So, for that reason, he was put into suspension for almost a year now. That kind of just goes to show that Hakari seems to be someone who may have a bit of a short temper or a hard time controlling himself when his emotions get really riled up. The other thing of note is that Hakari is a gambler. Now this is pretty important, because if this translation is to be taken as canonical, with Yuta saying when Hakari's on a roll, he's stronger than him, that could give us some very interesting insight into what exactly Hakari's curse technique is. Now, with all that information in mind, I have 3 big theories about what exactly Hakari's ability is. It could really be any combination of these 3. And before I get into them, I should say very mild spoilers for 7 Deadly Sins and Hunter x Hunter. My first theory is that Hakari's curse technique has something to do with his power being heightened under very specific circumstances. I get this theory from Griever, who's made the suggestion multiple times that he could be very similar to Escanor from 7 Deadly Sins. For those of you who don't know, Escanor's power works in the way that as the sun gets higher in the sky, his power increases, and his power reaches its height at noon when the sun is the highest in the sky. However, when the sun goes down, his power lessens, and during the night, he's effectively powerless. Now, I don't think Hakari's power will have anything to do with time, assuming this is how his technique works. However, I do think it's possible that it is more powerful under various circumstances than it is under others. It could have anything to do with his emotions, or whatever his status in the battle is, such as if he's taken a lot of damage, he becomes more powerful, or if he's dealt a lot of damage to his opponent, he does more damage, like stacking damage. The more times he hits them, the more powerful his hits become, something like that. I do think that's possible, more so the second one, as that would lean in more to Yuta's comments about Hakari being on a roll. When he's doing his best, he's potentially stronger than Yuta. Now, I do question how this ability would allow him to become as strong as Gojo eventually. It would likely have something to do with Hakari always fighting under specific circumstances, or figuring out ways to maximize his power when he's not under those circumstances. This one I find to be the least likely of the three, however, I do think it could be used in conjunction with any of the other ones. My next theory, and the one that I personally believe is the most plausible, is that Hakari's technique has something to do with gambling. This mostly has to do with the fact that he is a gambler, and that is apparently the most notable personality trait of his that Gege thought to mention during the interview for the fan book. This could work in a number of ways, such as Hakari betting on his cursed energy or how powerful it will be, which, if he rolls well, will give him a big boon, do a lot of damage to his opponent, or if he gets a bad roll, it'll do very little damage or potentially even damage himself. A specific ability from another series that I can think of and that other people have brought up would be Kite's Crazy Slots from Hunter x Hunter. The way Crazy Slots works is that it rolls for a random number, and whichever number it lands on determines what weapon Kite is given. Now, this is completely random most of the time. However, under various circumstances, Crazy Slots always does a specific roll. Hakari's ability could also work like this as well, because if his curse technique is something left entirely up to chance, it's kind of hard to believe that Gojo thinks he could be as strong as him eventually. So it's quite possible that under a specific circumstance, such as when his life is in danger, Hakari's curse technique will always make the best roll for him. It may also be possible that he could use something such as binding vows to make it so that his technique always gives him certain rolls under various circumstances. That could be how his power could eventually rival Yuta and Gojo's. It could be anything like that. Once again, I personally find this gambling technique to be the most likely, not just because it's in line with what we know about Hakari's character, but also because it would be fairly unique and would give a really good opportunity for a character who is not very strong sometimes, and on other occasions is one of the strongest characters in the verse. I think that would introduce a very interesting and entertaining dynamic for the culling game. My last theory is that Hakari's technique solely revolves around binding vows, placing restrictions on himself and others, so that if he fulfills certain conditions, he gets a great deal of power, and if his opponent does not fulfill those conditions, they are damaged or have their power reduced in some way. There are potentially infinite possibilities for what exactly a technique based entirely around binding vows could be. We do know that binding vows allow people to gain power beyond what they normally would be able to attain in exchange for something else. This could also be a form of gambling for Hakari. That could be his gambling technique, as it just has something to do with binding vows. But this could also open up a lot of very interesting possibilities for fights, in which Hakari bets a lot on a binding vow, places a great deal of restrictions upon himself in exchange for enough power to maybe defeat his opponent in a single strike. Could be something like that. That could lead to some very high stakes, very entertaining battles. Personally, I don't know how likely this one is, but I do think it would not be a bad choice. It would be very interesting. Binding vows are something that have not been delved into in great detail as of yet. It's still unclear what universal force exactly, watches over binding vows to make sure that they're followed. If Hakari does have a technique based around binding vows, this could be an opportunity to delve into that a bit. Yeah, those are my 3 big theories for what Hakari's curse technique could be. Once again, it could be any combination of the 3. Once again, the gambling could be based around binding vows, and the specific circumstances that he needs to fulfill for those binding vows could make him very weak or one of the strongest characters in the series. Regardless, Hakari is one of the features of the upcoming Culling Game arc that I am most excited to see. He's been a long time coming. He's been teased since the very start of the series. He's had more build-up to his introduction. Well, not more build-up, but, more suspense for his introduction than any other character. He's really the only character in the series who has had this much time since his initial mentioning between his actual introduction. So, needless to say, I think I and a lot of people have some fairly high expectations for him, but knowing Gege, I think those expectations will be met. At the very least, I just hope that Hakari's a pretty interesting character, and that he can live up to the hype that people in verse have given to him. So with that, that's all I have to say for this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a chapter. I'm going to be doing some more videos like this until the hiatus is over. So if you enjoyed them, you should subscribe so you don't miss any of them. If you enjoy other series such as Kengan Omega and Record of Ragnarok, I do videos in this series as well, so you should check out my channel if you're interested. You should also go and subscribe to my backup channel. I have that link down in the description, since I have 2 strikes on this one, and if I get a third, that's it for here. So you should go and subscribe to my backup, just in case anything happens to this channel. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. And since it's the end of the video, it's time to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons: Archbear, CJ2K, Fuse, Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, Zach Rowitz, K-God, Chris Redfield, Scratch23, Moonshadow935, Rat, and Ryzen4K. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at the end of videos or access to some extra content, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.